Good morning and welcome to November's AutoTalk program. I'm Dan Barson. Before I introduce today's speaker, let's quickly review a few administrative issues if we could. First of all, you'll receive a copy of today's program by the end of the week. That'll come to all those that registered for this morning's program. If you have any questions during today's program, please feel free to enter those in the Q&A section of your screen in the bottom right-hand portion. And finally, we'll be repeating today's program at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you have anybody that might be interested or you think might benefit from today's programming, please feel free and have them join us for the 4 p.m. programming. I have a lot of pride and I'm really happy to introduce Allie Mendiola. She's with DealerTrack, Senior Manager, Business Development for DealerTrack Technologies. Allie and I were talking prior to today's programming when we were doing the dry run, and I came to find out that she has quite a bit of automotive experience, field experience at the dealer level. She used to work for several OEMs in their regional offices. So she knows a lot of the challenges and a lot of the pain that everybody on today's call has. And right off a digital dealer, I sat in on her presentation out there in Vegas. It was outstanding material. I think you'll all really, really enjoy today's presentation. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Allie. Allie, take her away.
All right. Thank you, Dan. Really do appreciate the intro. And, you know, like Dan said, yes, I do come from the manufacturer background. But the reason why I actually moved over to DealerTrack wasn't because I wanted to leave the OEM side. It was really DealerTrack had approached me with these really awesome new ideas and this vision of an interactive digital buying experience. And I just was pretty much floored at the new types of technology that DealerTrack and other companies were starting to come up with in order to improve the automotive industry. So after 4 years, I've been with DealerTrack, really been working hard to help dealers do exactly this, increase CSI sales and gross profit by catering to consumers with interactive digital buying experiences. So that's exactly what we're going to go through today. We're going to start by talking about the consumer and their automotive shopping patterns, really trying to figure out what makes them tick, and from there, what their real expectations are in the shopping process. Then we're going to go through a website workflow. So when we talk about website workflow, we're talking about digital online retailing and different types of tools that you can add to your website in order to allow a consumer to start the purchase process. So really trying to sell to the consumer, but allowing them to start the purchase before they walk into the showroom. And then last, but certainly not least, probably the most important piece, the case studies. So dealers who have started to implement certain best practices, different types of tools they put on their website, and I'm going to share with you their real results of increased sales as well as gross profit. So let's get started. Your customers, how are they shopping? Well, they're spending about 3 months going through the purchase process. Back in 2008, consumers were spending about 6 months. Now it's down to 3 months because they have so much information at their fingertips. And during that 3 months, they're spending about 16.25 hours doing the research for their cars online. 71% of that is online, if we look at the entire piece of the puzzle. So they're really digging in. Now, during their entire shopping process, they're going to over 24 different research points, so 24 different sources. The great news for dealers is, of all of the sources, when it comes to digital, the dealership's website is at the top of the list. So whereas, yes, visiting a dealership and test drive really ends up finalizing the deal, the one piece of the puzzle before that a consumer really accesses, that's your website. So the age-old saying that content is king definitely stands true. Now, unfortunately, even though consumers are doing all this research, what they're doing is they're finding all the information they need, and with that, they're deciding to narrow down their scope. So in narrowing down their scope, they typically will visit now between 1 and 2 stores. Now, when I look at this, we have this McKinsey & Company study from 2014 that says consumers visit, on average, 1.6 stores. Well, we know there's not a 0.6. So we try and figure out, well, what is that 0.6? And here are a couple different scenarios that I think of. The consumer gets all the information they want. They find the perfect piece of inventory on their website, on the dealer's website. They walk into the showroom, and then what happens? Maybe that piece of inventory isn't there anymore. Or maybe the pricing that was shown on the website isn't consistent with the pricing that the consumer is getting in-house. So certain experiences that consumers will go through really end up taking that sale away from the first dealership that consumer walks in. So that's where that 0.6 comes from. That's the dealership, dealership B, that gets the sale by default. So let's keep moving on. What do consumers think of the current car buying process? Now, this isn't a question of what do consumers think of dealerships. It's just what do they think of the car buying process? This is a new AutoTrader study that came out just this year, and there were over 4,000 consumers who were surveyed. They had just gone through the purchase process, and only 17 of those consumers said that they really liked the process they went through to purchase the vehicle. So, you know, in saying that, we have to try and think, what exactly can we do? What type of experience is the consumer looking for so that we can cater to that customer's needs? And, you know, buying a car should be fun. And so we want to make it fun for the consumer. So what are consumers looking for? Well, first off, they want an extremely efficient purchase process. And I think this goes for any industry, any retailer, whether you're going into the grocery store or whether you're on Best Buy, you know, website trying to buy a TV. You want an efficient purchase process. And what's kind of interesting is this Deloitte study really narrows down and looks at the consumer and how much time they're willing to spend on each part of the purchase process. And so this is pretty key. Most consumers are not willing to spend more than 10 to 30 minutes per phase. So they're not willing to spend more than 10 minutes waiting for a test drive to be set up or 20 minutes going through, you know, the paperwork. So really interesting question there is, look, we want our process to be efficient as dealers, so what can we do online and in the store in order to increase those efficiencies for both us and then, of course, a better experience? Consumers are also demanding openness and transparency. They've done their research. They're fully prepared. You know this very well when they walk into your store. So some of the things that they really want to have, and once they do their research, they want to be prepared with are, you know, pricing. Consumers do want to understand what the price is beforehand because they see that as a value and as a time saver, so that once they get into the dealership, they feel like if they know the price, they have expectations that it's going to be a smoother transaction process. And then, of course, another piece, a guaranteed VIN being available on the lot. Now, of course, sometimes consumers wait too long and their piece of inventory they were looking at is gone. That kind of begs the question, what can we do in order to help consumers if they're really set on a specific piece of inventory? How can we secure that for them to walk into the store and have that piece of inventory on your lot for them ready to purchase? So you've got time savings, openness, and transparency. But it's not just about that. It is also, you know, we were talking a little bit about price. It's not just about price. According to that AutoTrader study, again, 66% of consumers say they would be more likely to purchase from a dealership with their preferred experience. And I'm going to get into this a little bit later when we're actually going through the statistics, but what we found is consumers are willing to spend a little bit more money to have a better shopping experience. So, you know, the perception is that sometimes the process for purchasing a vehicle can be controlled, too controlled, maybe uncomfortable, takes a lot of time, but with the right type of technology, we can transform the way consumers look at the auto industry and the way that you actually do business. So when we look at it, what has our goal been? As dealers, our goal has been to generate as many leads as possible so that we can hopefully turn those leads into sales. Now, the new thinking should be, let's not generate leads, let's start generating deals, and that's where this digital retailing comes into play. So what exactly is digital retailing? Well, it's retailing online, so think about it. What is the process of selling a vehicle in the showroom? That's going through figuring out the right piece of inventory, going and desking the deal, making sure that the consumer can get credit, you know, aftermarket selling, and then the contracting piece. So take all of that, all of the in-store process, move it onto your website, but making sure that both the online and in-store experience is cohesive and in sync. So think of it this way. The price that is shown on the website should be the same price that is shown if the consumer were to walk in the store. So that's really digital retailing. Now, why would a dealer be interested in digital retailing? Well, here are your reasons right here. First off, the top three are really about the consumer, what we had just talked about. Consumers, we want to meet their expectations, because if we meet their expectations, they're going to want to stop in your dealership first. Also, start the process online. If we can allow consumers the ability and have tools to start that purchase process online, the more work they do, the more invested they're going to become in your store. And so the more likely you're going to be receiving the sale. And then, of course, improving efficiencies from the dealership sales staff. What can we do, maybe with credit applications, different paperwork, to get that online so that we can, once the consumer walks in the store, move them through quickly. And then what's in it for you? Yes, happy customers, but also higher conversion rates and higher gross profit on deals that are digital retailing related. So let's look at transforming automotive retailing in an actual workflow. So think about it. You spend a lot of money on digital marketing, you drive consumers to the site, and finally they find a piece of inventory they're really interested in. Well, what happens there? In the past, a lot of the time, it would just be, find your e-price, submit a lead, schedule your test drive, but there really wasn't anything to allow the consumer to start doing the work on the specific vehicle. So that's where here I kind of have an example of a dealership website where it says structure my deal, skip the paperwork, save time at the dealership by doing the work at home. So it's really honing in on different key factors that are important to consumers. Here's another example of a dealer website, next steps. Do these next steps. This is how to get to the next step of the shopping process. And these built-in experiences. Look, you all have digital retailing on your website. You have probably a credit application and a trade tool. You probably even have a monthly payment calculator. But first off, are all of those tools robust? And do they all work together? That's the key. Having this workflow, because if you have this in a workflow and just not siloed all over the site, that's the ability that you have to push the consumer to each step to do more and more of the work, and therefore, of course, becoming more invested in this vehicle and in your dealership. So it starts with digital retailing experience. A lot of the time that starts with calculating a first pencil lease or loan. So here's an example of a first pencil lease loan. Now take a look at your monthly payment calculator on your website. The majority of those calculators, first off, if you look at stats, they get no utilization because they're just based on numbers. Now remember, consumers are going to over 24 different sources. So what if, for all those sources where consumers are trying to find the incentives, they're trying to find actual APR rates, all of these information and these tidbits that they're looking for and tons of different sources, putting them all in one location to make it easier for the consumer and a better shopping experience. So think of a monthly payment calculator, one that would work as a monthly payment calculator that's built on top of your desking system, so that real rates, rebates, incentives, lender information can actually come in and populate your website. Also, integrating trade. That's another key, because we know, of course, trade value can either determine if the consumer, say, is upside down and ready to buy a new vehicle, or, really does factor into the monthly payment. So having a trade tool that will give an actual offer that you could stand behind, that you could control in the back end, maybe increase or decrease the prices on specific vehicles you're interested in stocking on your lot, and making sure that once that value is served up to the consumer, that it can be auto-populated into the actual tool of the payment calculator, just like you see here in this example. So that's a great way to look at digital retailing in that experience. After that, always push the consumer to go further. What's your next step? Talk to them and say, hey, here's what you can do next. Send us this quote. Or in this case, pre-fill a pre-qualification form or credit application. Let's move you forward in the process. And, get them pre-qualified for financing so they feel comfortable when they walk in the store and they already have the paperwork done. Here's something else that's pretty new and pretty cool and relevant. Nowadays, and we're just starting to see this launching, dealers are starting to really inform consumers of aftermarket products. They want to set expectations for the consumer so the consumer doesn't just feel bombarded once they get into sales and F&I of, oh, here are all the add-ons, let's increase the price of the vehicle. So instead, dealers are picking their best options and packages, and they're actually showing them on the website. so that the consumer can understand what's available to them so that they can feel really confident when they go in to sales and F9. But think about it this way. What if the consumer leaves before completing the process? That happens all the time. Well, that's where digital marketing comes back into play, retargeting consumers so that you can bring them back to the place where they left off. And so here's a quick example of that. You probably all buy ads like this, but think about it. How can we buy ads to target those specific consumers who have already started the process online? So once you drive the consumer back to the website, see what you can do about targeting the specific, so really targeting the specific vehicles, makes, models, trims that consumer was already previously researching. And once you actually bring them back to the website, the key here is saying, hey, you've already, in this case, calculated a quote for trade, you've estimated your monthly payment, but you still haven't submitted a pre-qualification or looked at our protection plans. Are you ready to do that? Or here's another example. You remember I showed you that structure my deal, bringing the consumer back to the site and saying, hey, you still need to apply for credit, or if you're ready, let's actually put a down payment on that vehicle to make sure that it is there at the lot once you get there. So really cool ideas of making sure you bring the consumer back to the site where they've left off. Now, I want to touch a little bit on this consumer making deposits. So, consumers, they want to make sure that that vehicle that they were interested in is still on the lot once they get there. Now, of course, you as a dealer don't want to miss out on a sale. How long is it going to take that consumer to actually get to your lot? Well, that's really where, when you actually look at it, that's really where Reserve It Now, reserving a vehicle, putting a down payment on a specific vehicle can really make a difference. Now, of course, not every consumer is going to be interested in this, but having the ability to make sure that that consumer feels confident that that vehicle is going to be there for them, have a great experience, it's going to be there, ready to test drive once they get there. Now, that's really going the extra mile and an extra level. So those are some type of tools. Hopefully, you were able to get a feel of how they all work together. Trade works with payments, how credit applications can really be part of the puzzle of a next step, and then even these cool different ideas of reserving vehicles. So let's look now at some case studies and analytics that we have on dealers who are using these tools. Now, first off, overall, if a dealer is using digital retailing, what we have found is consumers who submit information through a digital retailing workflow, and it's associated with finance, on average, those consumers convert to a sale at about 30%. So think about it. All the leads that do come into your website, the ones that are coming through digital retailing, on average, they should be converting at about 30%. Could you imagine having those conversion rates? That'd be fantastic. Well, Acura Carland, for instance, does. So if you go to the Acura Carland website, it's really neat. They've got some of those, it's a different look and feel than I showed you, but they do have digital retailing tools on their website. And they are seeing different types of close rates, but higher close rates than that average 30%. They're actually seeing 35% close rates. This is just a screenshot of their website and how their payment calculator looks and how they integrate trade and, say, finance applications. But a best practice after I talked to Acura Carland that they do is when they have consumers call in on specific vehicles, they'll find that vehicle in inventory on the website and they'll shoot that consumer a link to that actual page. And they suggest to the consumer, go on here, start calculating your payment and submit this information to us so that we can figure out exactly what you can afford, and let's make sure we get you bought before you walk into the store. So that's why they're seeing, that's one of the many reasons why they're seeing such high close rates. Another example, Port City Nissan, they're out of New Hampshire. So at first, they didn't have any type of tools on their website. They didn't have credit applications. They didn't have any type of digital retailing tools. So when they first put these applications on their site, they saw a huge increase of website leads. In fact, 71% the following month, which was crazy. But then what they started doing is they were really starting to close more internet leads, and they had a benchmark of 49% when we talked to them in extreme cases with high gross profit. So what did they do differently besides just putting tools on their website? Well, one thing they wanted to do is make the process more efficient. And this is the really cool piece. With their credit application that you see here on the left, they have that credit application route directly into their finance portal. So that's all about the saving time. They're moving customers through the process a lot more quickly, therefore being able to focus and cater to their next set of customers, because once the consumer submits the credit application, whether they do it in-store or online, it's going to go directly to their finance portal, and it's going to be ready there, no duplicate data entry necessary, but for submission to a lender. So that's pretty cool and an awesome best practice. Now, let's talk a little bit about profitability. Yeah, we all want to generate sales. That's super important. But are we going to be profitable? By showing all this information, especially the monthly payments, is this really just a race to the bottom? Well, we didn't know. So we did an internal study on digital retailing. We looked at dealers with DealerTrack DMS, and those same dealers had digital retailing tools as well. So we took those dealers that were spread all across the country, and we analyzed over 19,000 records, so 19,000 sales. And what we found was, on average, a deal that had digital retailing associated, it came from a digital retailing lead, whether it was payments or finance. Those closed at about 20% higher gross profit than non-digital retailing deals. So that is fantastic, 20% higher grosses. Now, when you break that down even further, we wanted to get into front-end and back-end margins. And so you see here 17 versus 27%. But then we wanted to do it even further. We wanted to see new versus used because, you know, a lot of new vehicle sales, it's really hard to generate profit there. So here, what we saw was dealers are holding their gross for new vehicles and, of course, making more money in the back end. So fantastic numbers. So takeaways. I'm at 20 minutes, so I have to leave you with this. Think online to in-store. We're talking about the consumer of the future, and they're here now. They want transparency, they want efficiency, and guess what? You want that too because you want this to be a great experience. So think about ways to sell to the consumer the way they want to be sold. And think about integrating all those different digital retailing tools you have on your website and making sure that the consumer can walk through them. So with that, hopefully those will be some good challenges for you. I definitely want to say, if you're looking for any inspiration, insight, any type of help, you know, when it comes to figuring out from your website what you can do to improve it, please send in your information to Dan and Rachel, and, you know, I will get with our team to make sure somebody contacts you to do some consultation so that we can look over and see how we can help improve the sales process on your site. So with that, I'm going to actually open this up to questions. There is a box on your screen that you can type the question in. I did receive a couple questions while I was going through the process of slides, so I'm going to start with those. The first question is credit applications on our site. Can all credit applications be submitted through our portal? My credit applications are currently just going to the CRM. So that is a great question, John. So John, with that, credit applications, it really depends on who is providing your credit app. Now, if you submit, say, credit apps through DealerTrack, the great thing to do would be to look at DealerTrack credit apps so that those apps would go directly into dealertrack.com. It's also interesting to take a look at what those credit apps are and talk to that partner and see if they have integration with your finance portal. Because, you know, to my point earlier, yes, that can really increase efficiencies for your store and just make it a lot easier in the sales process. All right, Amy. Amy had a question on pricing. Amy says, I've never seen payment calculators like the ones that you had showed earlier in the slide. What exactly is that information that's being brought in? I saw something about $500 for incentives for MENAC. All right, so that's a great question. So monthly payment calculators, you have the basic calculators, but the one that I showed you are the most robust calculators that are out there today. And those are calculators that are bringing in actual lenders' information. So in that example, you would choose the lenders you want to work with, and any types of incentives that are available would populate for that specific vehicle. So ask yourself, ask your website provider, do you have a calculator that is built on top of desking data? That's the key. And then, of course, making sure that desking data aligns with your desking system in store. All right, let's see if there are any others that have been filtering in. Oh, here's an interesting one. With the Reserve It Now, it looks like we're moving toward purchasing vehicles online. Do you think that that's going to happen in the near future? Well, I think that there is something to be said about a consumer going into a dealership and really being able to physically touch and experience a vehicle. So while I think that these tools are starting to be created so that consumers can start the work online and the process can become more efficient, I really don't see the dealership being taken out of this. I see just a different mindset of the dealership. You know, maybe in 5 years, e-commerce will be here because there will be the tools available, but not every customer is going to want to go through that entire process. So e-commerce is probably coming. I believe it's coming, but not everybody's going to want to go through that process, so you have to make sure that you can cater to all consumers and the way they want to purchase vehicles. I don't see any more questions coming in. Dan, Rachel, did you see any questions on your end?
No, that's it, Allie, but I do have one quick question. With the change in demographic and certainly the millennials appear to be more comfortable online and certainly putting a deposit down online. Are you guys seeing that functionality increase in use, Allie, where you can put a down, you know, money down on that specific unit to guarantee that it's there when they come into the store?
Well, I'm definitely seeing more and more dealers add that functionality to the website. The percentage of consumers who do actually put the money down, it's a lot smaller. I'd say probably on average, maybe one consumer would do this on a monthly basis. But the thing is, when you look at the conversion rates for those consumers, it's well into the 90%. When somebody has the ability to put a down payment on there, they're going to most likely be purchasing that specific vehicle. So we're seeing more and more use of it. But I think really when you think about reserving it now, it should be more about the conversion of those consumers and then, of course, letting the consumer have the security of making sure they've done this work, they can secure that vehicle, and once they come in, it's going to be there and available for them.
Got it. Well, Allie, thank you so very, very much. I really enjoyed this presentation at Digital Dealer and thought it was right on. Everybody, let me just make a few quick announcements. You'll receive, again, a copy of today's program before the end of the week today. We'll be sending that out. If there are any of your folks that you think would benefit from this material, please have them join us for the 4 o'clock session. That's 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Future programming, on December the 15th, we're going to have a 2015 year in review and what to expect going into 2016. We're going to have a really dynamic panel. Tom Contos, Chief Economist for ADESA, Mike Collins, he heads up all the banking relationships for DealerTrack. We're also going to have Rich Koss and David Lynn. They are both lead auto analysts for Wells Fargo. In January, on January the 19th, we're going to have an interview with Mark O'Neill. That's a name that you probably all recognize. Mark was president of DealerTrack. As you all know, DealerTrack sold out to Cox. And we want to try to get some insights into what will that new landscape look like, what are the implications for dealers with this big blockbuster consolidation. So on behalf of AIADA, the board, the staff, we want to thank you for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you in December. Remember, AIADA represents your interest in front of Congress, the administration, and the federal agencies here in Washington, D.C. Thanks a lot. Have a great end of the month, and we look forward to seeing you in December. Thank you. Bye-bye.